We use the term dad versus father because there's a lot of fathering going on, but there's not a lot of dads.
What would you tell to the guy who's saying, but I'm so exhausted when I get home, I just find I don't have a lot of energy?
I have such a heart for that window. I think about that window that you just mentioned, and it closes so quickly. I remember backing out of the driveway, and I looked, and my daughter had to come through the garage to get in the car the day of her wedding to go to the church to give her away. When I back out of this driveway, it's the last time that she's going to have the same last name. And
don't do it to me.
Yes.
You know what I miss the most? Gosh, we're gonna be crying before this is over.
Yeah.
Guys, I'm excited to be here today. I'm out here in Kansas City, Missouri at the National Coalition of Ministries to Men National Conference. I'm here with my friend Jeff Springer. Jeff is the author of this cool book, #DadPrep. He also has started Suit Up Ministries, and he's got a cool thing that he does within that. We're gonna talk about what he's doing. He's been in the public school industry for years and years, served as a principal for 14 years. Man, I have some questions for him. Jeff, it's great to have you on the show, man. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it.
It's good to be here.
We're going to wing and fling it, buddy. You ready?
Let's do it, man.
Hey, so you were in the public school for how many years total?
34 years.
Are you still in it?
Well, I am at the higher ed level.
Okay.
Which is it's Sam Houston State University. Yeah. So I'm still, I do consulting with public schools. So yeah, so I've never really left it completely.
And you were a principal of a high school.
I was.
So tell me about the high school.
Yeah, it was what we call in Texas 5A.
Yeah.
So 2,800 students, about 250 employees. Yeah, it's kind of like being the mayor under one roof.
Oh yeah,
you know, I love big.
It's the size of a small town.
I love big school. And before that, I was an associate principal for 5 years in another district with a school over 3,200.
Oh wow.
And before that, assistant principal and coach and teacher and all that kind of stuff. So, but yeah, 14 years in one building. That's like a teenager.
Yeah,
in one building.
Oh,
Yeah, yes.
They weren't even born, and now they're a freshman in high school. You were there before they were born.
Exactly.
So the question all the guys want to know: you're in Texas. How was the football team?
Which one? The high school?
14 years when you were the principal.
Not real good.
Not too good.
No.
Okay.
No, we had great kids.
Yeah.
We over the course of 14 years, we weren't consistently good, but we had some good years.
Do you think a lot of football or anything revolves around the leader, or is it the kids? What do you think? What have you learned?
You know, as a former coach myself, I had some players that made me a better coach.
Oh, that's true.
Okay, there were some players. I had one or two that played even in the NFL, and everybody wants to claim those kids, you know. But those kids made us a better coach. But you know, I've always felt like there's so many more victories to be won off the field than there are in the locker room and in the hallways. And that's why I love coaching, because it's not always about wins and losses. Now in Texas, Friday Night Lights is a big deal.
Yeah.
So but again, there are a lot of victories to be won off the field as well.
So would you say when you step onto the campus, the 14 years were a principal, let's just focus there.
Yeah.
Was it all business? Were you a believer first? Was it you were an educator first? How did you see your position at a public school?
Well, I realized it didn't take me long that I became the principal at this high school for a bigger purpose. That it was bigger than just the title. That it was because it was at the time that I got the position, we were the only high school in the district. So, you can imagine in a smaller, more suburban area, not really rural, but suburban area, it was the center of that world.
Yeah.
So, but being the principal is a big deal. But I think using that platform, to really try to, sphere of influence grows. You have a lot of stakeholders. You have I tell my student teachers that I observe that, we're the only profession I can think of that our customer is also our product. Yeah, and so, but yet we have a lot of customers. We have our teachers are our customers, our central office, our, people, our community members, our parents. I mean, and we don't always make all of them happy, but we have an opportunity every day. I saw myself, it's not a challenge to do a ministry. I used to tell people that I had the biggest church in the community,
Yeah.
and we held service every day, or 5 days a week. And so there was a lot of opportunity to mentor and coach and to love on and create a culture. I wanted a culture, Jim, that when someone walked in the front door, that they knew that there was something different about Magnolia High School.
So, it's really interesting, Jeff. So I live in a town of about 38,000. The high school is about 2,400.
Mm-hmm.
My kids attended. If I did it all over again, my kids would attend. For whatever reason, I was raised in a public school. I'm a fan of the public school. My dad was a public school teacher. I coached probably almost 20 years in public school. But where I live, the school's being overrun by ideologies that are antithetical to biblical Christianity. So when you say that you want to change a culture, when you say that you've got a giant church, how do you bring your Christian faith to a secular environment? How do you deal with that as a believer? I mean, you want to honor the rules. I know there's rules. But how do you navigate around that? And you're the principal, so how would you encourage teachers to do that?
Yeah. One of the things I had to keep in mind, Jim, because I want, every once in a while you have to lose a battle or two to win the war.
Yeah.
So you have to remember that I am every student's principal. Every student's principal, regardless of what their belief system is or what they bring. Same with teachers and staff. So you just love people. You just encourage people. It's what you do every day. It's not necessarily what you say, it's what you do, and people watch. And sometimes it takes time. There's no replacement for just time and relationship, building relationship. When I got to this high school, I wanted to be old fast. I wanted to figure out how do you become old fast? Like he's always been there. Jeff has always been there. Well, when you first get there, people are, regardless of, prior experiences, people don't know you yet. So I try to get myself in front of large groups, large extracurricular activity groups, the football team, the choir, the band, the drill team, parent groups, community members, those kind of things, and try to create some traditions quickly, and establish those, that connection, and, just really be open and listen and try to do a lot of observing, but at the same time, maybe doing some symbolic things. One of the very first things I did in our front hallway, I don't know if you're familiar with what Stephen Covey calls the universal principles, time-tested principles like integrity and service and human dignity, and those kind of things.
I've read the 7 habits, but
yes, they're in this, and he talks about these principles that no matter what your background is, you can agree on quality.
Yes,
you can agree on service and human dignity, and those kind of things.
Yeah.
So those were our foundation. Those were, we became a place that was principle centered. And then you get an opportunity, once you establish those relationships, then people see who you really are. And that opens the door for those other conversations. Then you don't have to tell people who you are. They know, they know who you are.
Well, and I love your comment about getting old fast. It seems like there's really no shortcut to that. I mean, you just got to hang in there and be that guy that's around, right?
You do. And the average lifespan of a principal typically in one location is 3 to 5 years.
Well, in my community, we had a guy there for about 8. He retired. He was a great principal. Not a Christian. I had full reign as a youth pastor, but because I did it right. And I had the principles. We shared principles. And then they've had 3 principals in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
So I hear that.
And I think that hurts. The consistency in education is I think the one area where we have the biggest breakdowns, because kids are going to say, well, you're not going to be here next year. Why should I listen to you? If when I became a head coach, my senior group had I was their fourth head coach in 4 years. So do
Are you kidding
you
me?
think that senior group is going to listen to me
or trust you?
right? Because you're not going to be here next year.
You're
anyway.
just like my parents. You're just like my uncle. You're just like my mom's boyfriend.
Exactly.
You're just like you're just like my youth pastor.
Yeah, one more man to let you down, or person in their life to let them down.
So do you think if you're operating on these principles and you're operating as a man, or in this case a man, because our podcast is for men, a man of principles and integrity, and you're a Christian teacher, inevitably you're going to be faced with in the public school an opportunity or a time where you have to make some kind of stand. How does a Christian man who's in the education system do that? Should he fear being fired, or should he welcome that kind of persecution, so to speak? What would you say to that guy? Does that make sense?
I think the person just has to weigh the issue. Are we in it for the long haul or the short term? And again, there were some things that I felt like maybe I could have pushed forward a little bit more, but then with that, if I want to do 14 years, the longevity, if I'm going to win, ultimately win, then, and good always prevails. Sometimes you have to, I don't mean give up your integrity or give up your values or anything like that. Fortunately, I was never in a scenario where it was this or that, this way or that way. Make a decision, Jeff. I had never got to that point. But I think you can avoid that point by, again, choosing your battles. And I think sometimes we can really overstep if we're not careful, and then we jeopardize opportunities that are really bigger fish to fry.
Well, you know what's interesting? So we just said that you were the fourth high school coach they had in 4 years. A lot of turnover every 3 years.
3 to 5 years, yeah.
So, these kids already are used to people not playing the long game.
Yeah.
And I'm a big fan of the long game. Like when in marriage, you're playing the long game with your kids. You got to think outside the house when they're in their 20s and 30s. You're playing the long game. So I think what you're saying is when you are in this public school system, maybe you're a youth pastor coming in, maybe you're a teacher coming in, or you're like me, you're a coach coming in from the outside who's also a youth pastor. You've got to think, honor Jesus, but play the long game. With the school that I used to work at, where my kids attended, where I coached, youth pastors are no longer allowed to go on campus because some guy came in who was a youth pastor about 6 months and destroyed everything.
Yes, and that's a great example of stepping out of bounds and maybe taking advantage of a situation, going beyond the scope, and which in turns takes away opportunities for those to follow. One of the things you talk about longevity, all we have to do is watch the news, and almost every day someone falls, some leader, some great. And I did not want to. 14 years. I mean, it's almost like it's inevitable. The longer there's no, it almost looks like there's no reward for longevity.
Yeah.
So I knew at my 10-year mark, I knew that if I was going to, and I didn't know I just had 4 years, because I never entered a year thinking this was going to be it. I knew that one day God would tell me, that it was time. But so what I did is I knew that because it was only going to get harder the longer I went. I felt like I needed to surround myself with what I call my white cloud of witnesses. So I brought in these men that mentored me, have been mentors in my life, and none of them, when they sat around the table, none of them had met each other until I assembled them.
Oh wow!
And what they did the last 4 years of my tenure there, it was every Wednesday, these men, pillars in the community. One or two of them were pastors. Others were just godly men that I had met in different parts of my life, came and sat in my conference room and prayed for me and the school, period, for an hour every Wednesday. Now, Jim, sometimes I wasn't even there. Sometimes I had to, my schedule, sometimes I got called to central office for a district meeting or something like that. But these guys were there every Wednesday for 4 years. And I attribute surrounding myself with this white cloud of witnesses that gave me the strength and, and held me accountable and, and prayed for me to help me get through, those 14 years. And again, because the longer you go, the harder you fall.
Well, you bring up we're talking about long ball here, right? But what you're saying is you had a 14-year run. That's a heck of a run that's 3 times longer than the average principal. But when you're thinking long ball, you're not thinking that. You're thinking forever. You're bringing guys in that are coming before the throne of God. And I think that's something that we need to share with our children in public schools, with our teachers, with our principals. Hey, if you're a Christian educator, you've got to be thinking forever, but then work it backwards, right? Reverse engineer that thing so that you can play long ball. But we have forever at stake here, and forever means you need to be in the game, and we need to realize that everything you're doing in the lives of students, you're impacting potentially generations, right?
Right.
So where's the balance? Okay, so help me out here with this. Give me some wisdom.
Okay.
So we're playing long ball. You're engaged. You got people coming. As soon as you said you bring these cloud of witnesses, I'm like, all right, you're doing stuff, man. I mean, you're doing way more than like a non-Christian educator would do.
Yeah.
So now let's talk on the other side of the coin. What about the guy that's afraid to say anything about anything? Is he afraid he will get fired or she will get fired? Is there a point where they've got to take a stand and take their chances?
I think so. I think they may be one of the few lights in the whole building.
Yes.
And
which is the dilemma.
Which is what I tell men sometimes. I'm sure you have mentored men as well that are so unhappy in their current job for whatever reason. They feel stuck. And then I remind them that even in that stuckness, that they have an opportunity they may be the only light in the whole place. And there's a reason why God wants you there. He didn't always ask us to go where it's easy. And
rarely.
Typically, we're always the minority. We're always the minority.
Always. You hear all this stuff out there. I'm like, bro, I don't care what color you are. If you're a believer, welcome to the minority.
Yeah.
You're always going to be surrounded. In Texas, you're surrounded by church people, but you're still surrounded by unbelievers.
Yeah.
You're surrounded. Well, hey, I appreciate this. I love talking to Christian educators public school, because I've seen so many great ones and so many worthless ones, and man, I'm excited. But when you walked in, you handed me this book.
Yes.
So how long is this book? Is it hashtag Dad Prep?
It is.
Okay, so I got it right.
You got it right.
Hashtag Dad Prep, Preparation for Legacy. And it's a 52-week leadership study. Is this connected? Is this book connected to Suit Up Ministries?
Yes.
Okay, and is this the curriculum?
Yeah, Suit Up. Yeah, well, it's one of the resources. It's a hard copy resource. We have lots of resources on the website as well. But this book came around, during COVID. I'm attending unfortunately, one of my former students' funeral. I'm standing there, and I think it's December of 2020. So we're in the heart of, COVID. And so obviously I'm reflecting on his life, who I just recently reconnected with. He was in his late 40s and very interested in what I was doing and so forth, and tragic accident. And then this global pandemic, thinking, is this world ever going to be the same? And then starting to question my own mortality. I'm not a young man. I'm thinking, so God put on my heart this one word. And it was to preparation. And so for the whole year of 2021, I decided I was going to my ministry, to the men that receive communication from me on a weekly basis, I was going to take one aspect of what I think it means to prepare in terms of being the dad for one aspect for all year long, 52 weeks. And so obviously I wrote a blog that they very short, but I never thought that it would turn into I didn't know I was really writing a book.
I've done that.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, it's a book now. Right every day you got a book.
That's right. And so then it became a manuscript in 2022, and then the rest is history. So, and so I just, again, that's how we got to this idea of preparation, because, Jim, we've got today. We're only promised, again, I love hashtags, I love acronyms, and my latest hashtag is WGT. We got today. We got today. I'm 65.
You're 65?
Yeah, I'm 65. Okay, so I'm thinking.
Give me some. Wow,
But-
I'm 58, man. You look good, bro.
Well, thank
and
you.
You don't dye your hair. It looks
No,
like
I don't.
normal.
I got a little bit. Right
Yeah,
here.
but I mean, dude, okay, you got me. All right.
Yeah.
You got me. That's good, buddy. You look good, man. All right.
Well, but I'm thinking, on one hand, I'm thinking, I don't know how long I have, but on the other hand, I think God woke me up this morning. He woke you up this morning.
It's another miracle.
We got another day. We got today.
Yeah.
So what are we going to do with today? We need to prepare. And what's that look like in terms of being a dad? My heart, I love men's ministry, and I've been a men's minister, for 18 years at a church part-time when I was also full-time principal at the high school.
Wow.
Matter of fact, when I repurposed in 2016, on June 10th, 2016, I walked out of the school building and down the street into a church, Wildwood United Methodist Church, where I was the minister for discipleship full-time. So I didn't, but prior to that, I was part-time men's minister. All those years I was principal at the high school. And also a local pastor for United Methodist Church from 2002, 2004. But my heart has always been for kids that have been basically fatherless. The kids that are walking aimless into my building, you have those conversations with them, typically their behavior problems, you remove the layers.
Yeah.
When you find out more about their history and about their life, and inevitably you find out 9 times out of 10 that there is no positive role model in their life, male role model.
What percentage at the public school, 2,800 students, what percentage of those children were without a dad in your
Probably at least 33%.
And that's without a dad even around. That's not talking about divorce. There's just no dad around.
No dad. So,
One third of every kid.
Yeah, I'm going to share tomorrow our TED Talk that, some statistics. And it's about, I think it's 65% of our kids are growing up in a home without the dad. Now, in the home, okay? And then there's about 33% of them that don't have a dad, period. Yeah, so 24.7 million children in America today. Yeah.
Well, fatherhood
is huge.
It is a huge issue, and fatherlessness is the pandemic of our day.
It is. Are you familiar with a book by Bill Blackman-Horn, Fatherless America? He's a sociologist who wrote a book in 2000, 2001, and he talks about, and that's how long I've kind of been in the game, and it was kind of an eye-opener for me. He connects every social ill in America today he traces it back to absence of a father in the home.
Well, here's what I believe. I believe that males, you're born a male, but you're male genetically, habitually man. Male by birth, man by choice, right? So the problem with most of our society today is males.
Mm.
The solution is men. And so it just dumbfounds me that our culture keeps blaming men for the problems when men are the solution. We've got to draw a line in the sand. So this is really good. So, okay, so so go ahead.
You know what my parallel to that? I think it's a parallel. We use the term dad versus father because there's a lot of fathering going on, but there's not a lot of dads, and that's the difference between a male and man.
Yeah.
Men would be dad, males would be father. So now I know we have our Heavenly Father. But I like to refer to it as our dadhood and not fatherhood. So dad stands for daily act of devotion, by the way. There's an acronym for it.
Okay, there you go. I love acronyms.
So we talk about what does it mean to be daily? What does it mean to be active? What does it mean to be devoted? What does that look like? And that's the difference between being a father and a dad.
You'll appreciate this. So my parents got divorced on my 13th birthday, so I remember that.
Mm.
But my dad was a public school high school teacher, and I was going into high school. And man, that guy, he was so engaged. He's the most engaged father I've ever seen in my life, like totally engaged. So when my parents got divorced, there was no mistake about it. I had a dad around, but a lot of times these dads, when they divorce their wife, they just disappear as well. So what's the most important thing? What's the line of demarcation between a dad and what you call the father? So I'm going to say man and male, man, dad, father, male. What's the line of demarcation?
Participation. I mean, be present. We talk about being present, participating, prophesizing, pouring into your kid, seeing what your kid won't maybe not see himself or herself, being able, you're going to have to project all these P's.
A lot of P's.
Project into your children's lives, and you can't do that if you're just in the room.
Well, you made a comment. Okay, thank you.
You cannot be just
You said
in the room.
be present and be participating. Can you explain why those two have to go together?
Yeah, you can, just because you're in the room doesn't mean you're participating.
You could be on the couch.
You have to, that's that active part, daily active devotion. So what does it look like to be active? My dissertation was on play, okay, in secondary school.
I saw one of your chapters.
Just on, in Africa, not really too much unlike men here, but in Africa, they don't necessarily know, it's not natural for the man to play with their children. So it's like an epiphany. I found out, all the things we tell them, they take so literal because it's just not, we know that's correct. That doesn't mean we do it. It's just like, for instance, sometimes we know that if you leave the house, you're probably going to tell your wife where you're going or when you're going to be back, or she knows your schedule.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes the man would leave and he would just leave. And the very first testimony I have on video is one of my pastors even said, I learned, he calls it Daddy University, when Dr. Jeff in his lectures talked about, praying with your wife before you leave and telling her where you're going. And he goes, now when I come home, my kids and my wife are actually happy to see me because they know, because I know that they know where I've been and they know where I'm going and they look forward to when I'm coming home. Those little things that we take for granted that we know are right or wrong, that they're not even on their radar sometimes. And so that's kind of a cultural thing. But there's so many things that are, kind of epiphany for us that men don't, we just don't act upon it. We just don't do.
Here's something I've been processing for the last 4 months. I read a book called Spiritually Healthy Leadership. And in that book, he said something, I've been processing this, and I think it's true. He said, your ministry, our ministry, flows out of our marriage. And I would add, my parenting flows out of my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been talking a lot about dad, but where does the husband-wife relationship fit into the fathering relationship?
Mm-hmm.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, we tell the dads that the greatest gift you can give your children is to love their mom.
Say that again. I just know we're dumb guys. We have to hear it twice.
The greatest.
We're not dumb guys. We're just, sometimes we need to hear it twice.
As a husband, as a dad, the greatest gift you can give your children is to love their mother. Now, we have said that because we also preface, but we also know that things happen, that, divorce happens. But but divorce doesn't give you an excuse to also divorce the kid.
Yes.
But from the onset, we hope, we want, the sacred vows that you've taken with this other person, that, again, to be able to model that for the next generation, for your kids. Sometimes, I think it's a lot easier to say, to tell those things to people than to actually do. And sometimes you have to check yourself. I've actually called my adult children and said, and checked myself, was I really a good father? Am I good to your mom? Well, Dad, of course, we all need that validation every once in a while.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we don't ask those questions, or we don't have anybody holding us accountable asking those questions.
Yeah.
And that's when we need to surround ourselves with men that love their wives and love their children and are like-minded. And we all need a sage. We all need someone to mentor us, ask us those difficult questions, and also to make sure that we stay on that path, care about our journey and all of that. But I don't know if I answered your question or not about the
100%
with the husband wife. I think if they can see the love between the two of you, then I think you don't have to tell them anything. They see it. They've experienced it, and
when your faith flows out of your marriage, everything flows. I've had to go back and make it right with my kids because I felt like I didn't frame their mother right. Mm-hmm. We've been married 32 years, great marriage, love her to death, but mistake I made as a father. So one of the things we do here at Men in the Arena is we have identified an enemy. And the enemy is what we call this stress bubble of life between about 28 years old for a man and about 50 when his kids are in the home. So you and I are on the other end of the stress bubble. We have our own stresses we've created, right?
Yeah.
Always creating a crisis.
A different bubble.
Always creating a crisis, always blowing a bubble. But in that bubble there, you know, you got a guy, all I remember about that bubble of 20 years was being exhausted and having no free time, you know. And I did it right in the bubble, but just being exhausted. What would you tell to the guy who's saying, man, you're saying presence and participation, but I'm so exhausted when I get home. I just find I don't have a lot of energy. How would you bring that guy back to?
I love that because I have such a heart for that window.
Yes.
Of men.
That's our window.
I want to
That's
speak.
this window.
I want to speak to, you know, I want to speak to men at all life stages, you know, in all circumstances, whether they need reconciliation or, you know, or they've been there, done that dads, or empty nest dads, or raising daughters or raising sons, or all these scenarios, you know, future dads, new dads, whatever. But that window that I think about that window that you just mentioned, and it closes so quickly.
Never opens again.
And what happens is we end up wishing that season of our life. I just said this about 3 hours ago with the Dave who we were talking at lunch. How we wish that that season away, and before you know it, it's just a mist. And before you know it, you're walking your daughter down the aisle, or you know, and you're going, how did this happen? Or you're taking both of them, you dropped your last kid off at college and you look at your wife and you go,
who are you?
Yeah, who are you? And are we done?
Yes.
And you're not. It's just beginning.
Baby.
It's just beginning.
Seriously, like we're having more fun now. And we're like, man, this is so good.
But even the mundane things like the laundry and unmade beds and clothes on the floor and all the things that you think are monumental. And you even kind of, there's even a time period that you mourn that. I remember I stood in my daughter's, her room the day after she left for college. And she was only in a college an hour away. And it wasn't the idea that she was only an hour away. It's just that part of our life would never be the same. And I stood in our room like she was really gone.
Yeah.
Like this was, you know, and I go, well, Jeff, you wouldn't want it any other way. You did your job. You don't want her sitting on the couch. You want her to go to school or move on to the next journey. You did that. And we did that. But again, if you just blink, that thing is over. And I'm sure you're the same way, but I remember backing out of the driveway to go, and I look, and my daughter had to come through the garage to get in the car the day of her wedding to go to the church to give her away because it was raining. And I promise you, I was the only one in the car thinking about that when I back out of this driveway.
Yep. It's over.
It's the last time that she's going to have the same last name. And
don't do it to me.
Yes,
don't do it.
Yes.
Go on.
And so, I mean, I remember standing in the hallway with my son-in-law, who was a former student of mine as well, and you know, had a moment with him. And he says, "I'm going to take care of her." And but those are part of those. But you're going to be there before you know it. When I used to do freshman orientation with my parents, freshman parents, I would say, "I'm going to tell you, parents, these are going to be the fastest 4 years of your life." And I had to change that because once my kids got into college, those were the fastest 4 years of my life. But you know, in kids, you know, and I felt like one of my biggest jobs as principal was to remind the students to enjoy this 4 years, because even though as a freshman you think it's forever before you become a senior, you're going to look up in the spring of your senior year and go, where'd it go? And it only goes faster as we get older.
You know what I miss the most? Gosh, we're gonna be crying before this is over.
Yeah.
I miss the noise.
Yeah. Yeah. That was it. Yeah.
It gets quiet.
Yeah. 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 And so they've got to, You know, when I talk to young dads, don't, if it, you know, sometimes I've seen dads kind of not abruptly, but just kind of shirk or kind of move their young child off their lap. And I go, there's gonna, and my daughter, I still pick up my 7-year-old granddaughter, and she's getting big, and my daughter goes, Dad, you don't have to pick her up. And I said, I'm gonna pick her up as long
I get a hernia,
as long as she wants me to pick her up.
Yep.
Because there's gonna be a day number one, she'll be too big or too old, and it just won't be the right thing to do, or she's not gonna want to be.
Well, here's the other thing that you and I know this. You and I both know this. When your kid, and I've said this many times, when your kids are in the house, you control the narrative. But guess what? When they leave, you got a cats in the cradle program. They control the narrative. And if you do it right, you're going to have a wonderful life with your kids and grandkids. If you do it wrong, your life will never be the same. Yeah. We've got to get this. These guys, we've got to get it right. If we get it right here, it changes everything. We've got to get it right in the stress bubble.
Well, you know, nowadays, there rarely are hard copy picture albums.
Yeah, true.
Okay, now with all our pictures on.
I think they're going to come back.
Yeah, come back.
I really do.
But you know, if you flip through that album and you're not in those pictures, you can't turn, as you said, you can't turn the clock back. I mean, those pictures don't lie. And so if you're not involved in your kid's life today, it's going to be revealed in their lives and in pictures for the rest of their lives.
And Jeff, here's the other thing. I believe one of the things that God has given us as men is great responsibilities. This is so fun as a man. We are the tribal storytellers. We're the ones that get to tell the story.
Yeah.
Like, we collect the stories, and as our kids get older, we get to tell the stories. You get to tell the wedding story to your daughter in tears in your eyes. You can do that the rest of your life. That's your story. Yeah. We get to tell these stories with our kids. And it's just, we are the story collectors. So there's the picture. Let Dad tell you the story. My kids will drive, and they still do this. We'll go on road trips, and we do my ministry does a man camp every year, and my 3 boys go, Dad, tell us a story about that. Tell us a story about that. Because I'm trying to pass on. Tell us the family history. Tell us how, my oldest son, James, is James number 4, and he's going to have James number 5, right? Tell us about number 1. How'd that happen? So we're telling the story. Yeah. But listen, if you're not in the story, you got no story to tell.
Yeah, what is your story?
The sad thing is some other guy's telling your story.
That's right. There are so many times, Jim, that I was the benefactor of an absentee father. All those years I was a teacher and a coach.
Oh,
and
yeah,
absolutely. I have walked girls across the field for homecoming. I go, how can a dad miss that? I've been a surrogate, dad at father-daughter dances. I've walked senior boys on senior night on the track before the games. I mean, where are all the dads?
I'm gonna tell you what, they're coming back. We're changing this thing, but it's one book at a time, one ministry at a time. We just got to grind it out, buddy. We got to, I think God is raising up a generation like us to reach that generation that's been missed. So anyway, well, okay. So Jeff, man, I love this. I can't wait you just hand me this book. I can't wait to read the book. How can they get a hold of you and plug into your ministry?
Well, the website is, again, The Dad University. TheDadUniversity.com, or Jeff@theuniversity.com is my email. Okay. And, so those are probably the best 2 ways.
Do you want them to go to Amazon to get this book?
Amazon.
That's the best way. We make more money if you go to Amazon.
Yeah, you do. That's right. Or, if you lead a small group, a huddle, you can email us on the website and we'll get you a group rate. So you don't have to pay, the top dollar for each book. We'll get you good rate, bulk rate. And there's a way to do that if you just go to the website.
Jeff, thanks so much, man. It's good crying with you, brother.
Man, it's an honor. I feel like I've been in the locker room all day, man.
I know.
It was time for me to.
I know, we were getting a little fired up there.
Get on the field, man.
I really enjoy you, man. That was. Yeah.
Well,
that's good.